Start building trust. The referral system Queensland business owners wish they'd started years ago. Hi everyone and welcome to Queensland Business Stories, brought to you by connectedplatforms.com.au. IT done right, done better. Today we welcome Paul Lomas, who has spent more than 2 decades at the intersection of technology and human connection, and he's learned sometimes the hard way that trust is the only thing that actually scales. Thanks so much for joining us today to share your story. How are you going, Paul?
I'm doing really well, Chris. I hope you are too. And thanks so much for having me, and Connected Platforms for having me on the podcast.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, look, I know our audience is going to love your story. It's a fascinating one, and it starts back at the start of the internet. I find this absolutely fascinating because you were right there back in the 90s, back when it was all happening. Tell us about that. How did you get to where you are today? What was that journey? Because it was fascinating.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think that certainly people of our sort of age, I think we're incredibly lucky, to be fair. I mean, you normally only get one opportunity in life to go through, an industrial type revolution. And we've had 2 bites of the cherry, haven't we? So we're really lucky. We had the web revolution in the early 90s, and obviously we had the dot-com boom and bust. But yeah, I was there early doors. I saw the opportunity. We had a publishing company, paper-based publishing company. And I just had this crazy idea. I thought, well, if we can sell advertising in magazines, then imagine how many advertisements that we'll be able to sell on this World Wide Web thing. So we were actually the first internet web development company in Merseyside, and we were the first company registered in the UK Yellow Pages under the category of internet services. And then who knew, 30 years later that we'd be here now going through a similar sort of revolution with artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. But I feel like we've got you to blame then. The Yellow Pages, that takes us back, doesn't it? To think about when you let your fingers do the walking now. It's nothing like that. But should we be blaming you for all these internet ads we get these days?
Oh, listen, I wish you could blame me. I'd probably be doing this interview sat on my yacht somewhere. But no, I'm not going to accept full responsibility for that.
Fair enough. Look, you moved from sort of that early internet angle to really running one of the biggest referral organizations in the world. Talk to us about that, because I think that's really interesting as well, that you went from sort of this start of the internet where it was all connected and about connections to really, was it taking it that offline? Was it still using the internet? What was that journey?
Oh, listen, obviously, it's tough being in business. My girlfriend and I, she's now my wife, we went away traveling. And I always knew, ever since I was at school, that I wanted to start a business. I had an idea of what type of business I wanted to start. And I think my uncle is a very successful businessman. And I think he sort of like lit the fire in me that I wanted to be a little bit like him. And so I had an idea when I came back, knew exactly what I wanted to do, had the knowledge to be able to do it. And it was quite stressful. I know my girlfriend used to say, or my wife used to say, that I used to keep her awake at night, grinding my teeth. I was incredibly stressed about it. But look, I think in life, it's better to regret things that you have done than things that you haven't done. So jumped in and gave it a go, and really didn't have a big network at the time. And then I was introduced to in-person networking, and I went along to a BNI group. And over time, I learned a lot about the process of building referable relationships with people. And it's really translatable, whether you've got an in-person business, whether you've got a remote business, or even an artificial intelligence-driven business. Your personal relationships are just something that nobody can take away from you. So obviously learned a little bit about the BNI system. I generally do tend to throw myself into things 100%. And I became when we came over to Australia, literally knew nobody in Brisbane at all when we arrived there. But I knew that I had to build my personal relationships up. So again, one of the first things that I did is join the BNI group. And then because of my experience in the UK, I started managing groups. And then I was given an opportunity to buy a franchise down in Canberra. And so I used to fly in, fly out down to Canberra. And then I was given an opportunity to buy the Brisbane or part of the Brisbane franchise. And then long story short, I was working with hundreds of businesses and thousands over my franchise period in Brisbane. We wanted to go back to the UK. So we ended up buying a franchise over in the UK. We had some family issues, and again, I'm really grateful for BNI to give me the opportunity to be able to transfer over to the UK, to my hometown of Liverpool. So obviously, it was always the plan to come back to Australia. And here we are. I thought when we landed back here and I got back involved in my IT business, that my days of networking were behind me. But look, the personal relationships that I built, and I was slowly sucked back into the networking world again by the people that I knew really well when I was running my BNI franchise. And I know the connected platform guys. I remember, Eric turned around and said, "Look, I'm just looking to see what you're going to do next." And I thought, hey, I've got this idea where I think certainly with artificial intelligence coming, we can streamline things and integrate new technology into in-person networking. And that's exactly what we're trying to do now with Local Recommend.
And I definitely want to talk about that a little bit more, because it's something I think that a lot of business owners don't give enough time or thought to, what you're creating there, this idea of in-person. It might be augmented, but it's still this in-person personal relationship. It's so important to me. I want to, before I dig into that a little bit more, talk about something you've developed that you call the refer method. I think this is really some of the value that we can offer here to the audience listening. Can you talk us through that, and why you think most businesses, or most business owners at least, they really don't have a systematic approach to this? Referrals are probably the most important part of their business. They might even acknowledge that, but they don't really have a systematic approach to dealing with it.
Yeah, look, it's crazy. I mean, the stats are out there. 98% of businesses rely on referrals, but only 3% of businesses have a strategy to find referrals. It's nearly 70% of B2B businesses, rely on referrals when they're looking to outsource, or certainly when they're looking to, bring somebody in to do work with them, and they'll go through a referral source. I mean, look, you'll even see it at government level. Whichever government is in power at the time, they'll generally use people that they've got pre-existing relationships with when tenders go out and so on and so forth. I mean, I know obviously it's transparent, but it is all about the personal relationship. And, we've created our own culture within the organization, and we have something called the ABC system. This is where you attract people, and you bond with those individuals. And a great way to bond is to meet up with them regularly. So whether that's over, a cup of coffee, or whether you go to an in-person meeting, or whether it's at the footy at the weekend. And it's those touch points over time where you'll actually convert those people that you attract. And not everybody is going to be attracted to you, in so much as I'm in the web or the IT type business. So I'm generally attracted, certainly business-wise. We work in engineering, we work in medical, and we work in legal. There are three big markets that we generally tend to work in. So I do tend to attract those type of people based on the clients that we're working with at the moment and the skill set that we have. And then it's about moving through that process with the people that you do attract in order to build a referable relationship with them. And, my most profitable partnerships that I've built, some of them took, years to build, but they generated, hundreds of thousands, and on one occasion, multi-millions of dollars worth of value for my company. And that's just through the regular touch points with people and building those referable relationships. So it's about moving through that process to build those relationships over time. It doesn't happen quickly. It does take time, drips in the bucket, so to speak.
And you often use the phrase that revenue follows trust. And I think that's an important part of the distinction that you're making there. It takes time, because trust isn't something that is immediately given. It's something that's earned. Is that really the overlooked part of that formula, that to really build that trust, you do need those multiple touch points that you're talking about?
Yeah, look, I mean, you can meet somebody at an event and they can tell you that the best person in the world at what they do. But unless somebody's actually vouched for them, yeah, they're brilliant. Or somebody that's used them in the past to give them that level of credibility, you're going to believe somebody that you met for the first time. So, it is about reaching out to people, potentially touching base with people you see yourself working with. It's not always going to work out. But once you've got that initial relationship with somebody, you've just got to take the time to build that over time and build that level of trust. I'll tell you a story. So my most profitable referral that I ever received, it was a guy that I met at the gym, believe it or not. Now, this guy, I didn't know at the time. We used to go running with each other, and we used to go to the gym 3 days a week. It was a real old school boxing gym over in the UK. And over time, we started seeing each other, and we started going out running as part of a group. We got to be quite good runners, and we always used to come into the gym at a similar sort of time. So some of the other guys are getting at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Me and my friend Mick, we used to get in at 6 o'clock. And so we built that relationship over running, and we'd spend, an hour going for a run, and then we'd do some bag work and a few circuits. And over time, I found out that he was an IT director in a barrister's chambers. And he gave me some really low-value work to do for chambers that if it went bad and I wasn't very good at what I did, it wasn't really going to reflect poorly on him because he was really the only one that was going to be using it. So we built an intranet system for him. And then I got the job. We got contracted to rebuild the website. And it was the second largest barristers' chambers in the UK. They had multiple offices. And then slowly but surely, we started getting referrals into the barristers. And they all had side businesses and side hustles. And one of them used to run, or he still does actually, it was the largest specialist auction website in the world. And he wanted us to build an online auction platform for him. And so we did that. And he was doing 4 auctions a month. And we did all the updates. We did the creation of the site. We did the maintenance. We did the management for over 15 years. And that was a brilliant client as a result of meeting a guy in the gym.
And that's a perfect example. What a great story that shows the power of that. And that didn't happen overnight, that's for sure. That was something that built from just being out there and doing things and interacting with people, I suppose, would be the best way to describe it. That's an excellent story.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, this is the thing. I mean, this is what I always say to my kids. You never know what backstory and what people do. I know I used to take my car down to a local garage just on the outskirts of the city. And I got chatting with the guy who ran the business down there. And he used to have some quite nice cars in. I imported a sports car over from the UK. I think it was one of the only ones in Queensland. And so that was a bit of a talking point for a start. And some of the exotica that the guy used to have in there, and he used to walk me around, and because I had an interest in cars, and he had Jaguar XJ220s, Ford RS200s, Porsche RSRs, some really, really nice cars. And he said, that Lamborghini that's over there, he said, it's owned by one of the richest men in Queensland. And he said, he's probably going to be in a little bit later, maybe when you pick your car up. And he said, you'll know him. He said, because he drives around in an old Holden station wagon. And he said, he doesn't look like what you'd imagine a multimillionaire or even a billionaire. But he said, look, this guy is like seriously rich. He has me going over to Le Mans with him every year to look after his cars that he enters in the Le Mans 24-hour race. So this guy was like seriously wealthy. And I did go past and pick my car up, and I saw him outside having a chat with this bloke. And he just looked like a regular bloke in the street. So you can never judge a book by its cover. You've really got to treat everybody the same. And look, not everyone you're going to meet is going to be a key referral partner. But if you treat everyone, equally with dignity and with respect, you never know where your next multi-million-dollar or, multi-$100,000 or even your next $10,000 job is going to come from.
Another great story. I love that. The connection that's just there and you stumble upon. Amazing. But you've taken that a step further with Local Recommend. Like you're actually trying to, I guess, help other people do that in a more structured way who maybe don't have the ability that you've got there to be at the right place at the right time. I'd argue that's not luck, that's skill, how you've sort of applied that. But talk to us a little bit about Local Recommend, how you're framing that maybe as an alternative to that traditional model, probably where you started, really. What were the frustrations you were trying to overcome? You've obviously built it a bit differently. What was that about?
Yeah, listen, when we came back to Australia, it was 2024, 25. And obviously, I reconnected with a few of my contacts that I made whilst I was running BNI. And as I say, a few of them were basically saying, look, we're waiting for you to do something. Why don't you do something? I didn't want to get back into running networking groups. As I say, I wanted to concentrate on my IT business. But look, let's be honest, AI is going to touch and affect everybody. And whilst the in-person is incredibly important, and I did sort of like play with another few in-person groups, and to be honest with you, they were just friendship groups. They didn't really have any structure, and there was no sort of like real networking knowledge. And I do have, as you said in your intro, 20 years of, 25 years of in-person networking experience and knowledge. So I think there's a lot of value that can add there. My wife had been talking to me for a while as well and encouraging me to maybe start my own group. And I thought, you know what? Why don't I combine, what we do with Pixelbird, which is the web development company the IT company that we run, and my experience with regards, in-person networking, and we'll start in-person networking groups, and we'll develop an AI platform at the back end, where money is not going to be an obstacle for people to want to get involved. We're going to put people before profit. And if people haven't got, thousands of dollars to spend on a membership, but they do want to get involved in some sort of structured networking environment, then we'll give them the platform to do that. And so I'm really excited about the opportunities with artificial intelligence in all aspects of business, not only in-person networking or online networking. And I think the platform that we're creating, will help not only businesses connect with their customers, but potential, mums and dad customers to connect with businesses as well.
Because I think a lot of people would argue there's a risk that AI gets in the way of the human element here and that everything just becomes interacting with machines. But you're really highlighting there that there's an opportunity to use some of that tech to actually strengthen the human aspect here. And I think it's naive to think that there isn't going to be human relationships still at the core of business going forward. It doesn't make any sense to me that it wouldn't be.
Oh, listen, we're tactile creatures, human beings, aren't we? We love that, that chat over a cup of coffee, or if you're going for a bike ride at the weekend and, having a chat with people. Or look at it even years ago, when I used to go to the gym and me and Mick would go for a run and have a yarn for, 45 minutes to an hour of what's been happening in our workplace. And I think just for, if nothing else, for our mental well-being, yes, we need to connect with other human beings, don't we? And to be honest with you, if you listen to other podcasts or other experts talking about artificial intelligence and the way it's going to go, and whatever your take might be on that, and they all say the one thing that's not going to replace is your personal relationships and your personal connections. And so, look, some great advice that I got years ago was spend 90% of your time on your job and spend 10% of your time on your career. And really, your career is the relationships that you build, the connections that you make, and the depth of those connections. And so whatever line of business that you're in, you are going to be touched by artificial intelligence. There's no question about it. Just make sure that you've got a strong network behind you.
You sort of addressed this before, but there are so many business owners in Queensland who will be running on referrals but never formalised it. You've talked a little bit about the processes that you use to do that. But is there any examples or stories about how much it's costing people who just keep it informal, who think I'm just good at having a chat, but don't actually formalise the process? Is there something in that needs to be addressed, do you think? Are there too many people out there who are missing the dollar value of formalising some of that process a little bit more, particularly as we go into an AI age where maybe it's a little bit harder? I don't know.
Yeah, look, you can go, there's heaps of networking events all over Brisbane. You can go to, multiple events and you will occasionally see the same face pop up again and again and again. And occasionally when you have a conversation with these people, you see that they've got more of a shotgun approach. They tend to think that you turn up to random events, you go and chat with random people. And again, I was at an event, years ago. There's one sort that really sticks out. And there was a lady came up to me, and she was in the telecommunications business, and she knew who I was. I think we connected online via LinkedIn or Facebook, I can't remember. And she basically started interviewing me. How many staff have you got? Have you got a switchboard in the office? What type of switchboard is it? I'm basically just trying to sell me a mobile telephony offering. And I just thought, you genuinely don't get it. I don't really know you. I don't know if you're any good or not. I don't know anybody who does know you that's recommended you to me. And so having that shotgun approach, I'd never end up referring her business until we ended up sitting down and we built a relationship over time. A little bit of the reverse situation that I was in with my friend from the gym. And this is where, some people might see that it's a bit mundane, going to, a regular weekly meeting, let's say. And whether that's online or whether that's in person is really irrelevant. It's those regular touch points that really add the value. I've got another story for you. When I first came to Australia, I still kept my IT company over in the UK. But obviously I started picking up Australian clients. And I thought to myself, well, I've got UK hosting and I have American hosting. But if I'm going to be selling and producing websites in Australia, I probably need some Australian-based hosting. And so I used a company down in Sydney that were one of the biggest Australian hosts at the time. They subsequently resold. And there was one guy that I used to talk to, and he was a big Liverpool fan, and I'm not. So you can draw your own conclusions there. But we had something in common with each other. And so whenever I used to ring up the office, everybody as a default that I spoke to used to say, "Oh, do you want to speak to Dave?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, that's fine." So me and David had talked to each other about business and the problem that I had. And then we started talking about football, about soccer. And this happened for probably 3 or 4 years. And then one day I got a phone call off Dave. And he said, "Paul, one of our biggest resellers is getting out of the business. And I'm wondering whether you'd like to buy it." And after a bit of due diligence, I said to Dave, "Listen, I don't know what these guys are going to do. They may just go and start another domain and hosting business." And said, "So for me to spend money with them, there's no client loyalty there. So I'm not going to, purchase the business. But if they are genuinely looking to get out of the business, I'll be quite happy to take over their clients and look after them for them." And so Dave pretty much gave me this mid-tiered IT development company, hundreds of domains and hosting packages. Now, about 2 years after that, he called me and he said, "Paul," he said, "I'm going to be moving up to Queensland. My dad's selling the company." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, my dad actually owns this Australian hosting firm." It was a massive company. If I said the name, I'm not going to embarrass anybody by mentioning the name. But if I said it, you'd know who they were straight away. And I'd been building a relationship with this guy for 5 years. I never knew for 1 second that his dad owned the company. But it's off the back of that relationship that I got my second biggest referral. Now, I've never even met the guy. I have met him subsequently because his dad went and bought a place up the coast and he moved up with him. But my relationship with this guy was over the phone. But we used to touch base with each other multiple times a week sometimes. Sometimes it was only once every couple of weeks. But it was then regular touch points over many, many years. And we built that deep relationship with each other where we knew we were okay. Like none of us said anything out of turn. He knew that I was trustworthy and I ran a good business. That gave him the confidence to be able to refer me one of his biggest clients.
So how do other people get to that point? Is this where people should be trying to replicate some of the lessons that you've learned there? Like, what would your advice be to someone who isn't necessarily the outgoing person? Because you've given so many examples today that you don't really need to be that outgoing person. You just need to continue to touch base. What does that look like for someone who might not be quite so sure about how to do it, or might not be quite that comfortable in just reaching out? Is it simple? Is it hard?
It is a learned skill for sure. And look, this is what I've been doing for 15, 20 years, teaching people how to do this stuff, and this is what we're continuing to do at Local Recommend. And as I say, the guys that I touched base with when I came back to Australia, this is why they were encouraging me to start a network, because there's a lot of value that I think I can share, where I'm not going to put a huge price on it. And certainly we do have a nominal membership fee for Local Recommend, but look, I'm not making any money out of that. That literally just gets plowed back into the software. So this is not a money-driven thing that I'm doing. This is about something where I believe that we can really add value, and we can build something over time that can really give a lot to the Brisbane business community. But it really is about being more interested than interesting. So be interested in the people that you're talking to. You've got to spend time as well, just having a conversation with people. And the best way I can say is another story. So we've got a property, and we needed some work, and we needed some work doing. So there's a guy down the road from where we live, and I saw an advert on Facebook, and he had some clean fill that he wanted to get rid of locally. So we were looking for some clean fill to do a little bit of work on the property, and we got him round, started talking to the guy. I found out he didn't just have an excavation business, but he had another side business. And he started asking me what we did, which is quite unusual. I find a lot of the time that I'll generally ask people what they'll do, but more often than not, they won't actually ask me what I do. And that just proves that I'm doing my job properly, to be honest with you. But occasionally when they do say, what do you do? And I tell them, and I'll spike their interest, and they'll start asking a few more questions. Anyway, I told them that we specialize in integrating CRMs and building AI voice agents within our agency. And he said, that's really interesting. He said, I'll have a chat with you. I'm buying another business, and I probably want a website doing. Now, look, anyone can probably knock a website up in this day and age. And building an AI voice agent that works properly and is integrated with your price list and your opening hours, that's probably a little bit more difficult. So he contacted us. And this was after 8 months of my original meeting, and I'd had regular touch points with this guy as he came and dropped more mulch and more clean fill off at our property. And then he called me one day and said, yeah, we're interested in going ahead with that voice agent now. So again, that was another slow burn. I think, yes, occasionally you will meet somebody and they may give you a job straight away. Highly, highly unusual, I must admit, because they're putting their reputation on the line. It really is just about having a conversation with people and just seeing where you can help them more than anything else. And people are generally ready to come and have a conversation with you when they're ready to buy. They just need to know what you can do and that you've got credibility to be able to deliver for them.
Look, this conversation has been so wonderful. I think there's so much that people gain from this. To wrap up, maybe talk us through what people could do if they wanted to get in touch with you personally, if they wanted to become involved with Local Recommend, if they wanted to get some sort of assistance to do what you're talking about, particularly if they're not that confident, but they just want a little bit of guidance on how to be, well, as you sort of framed it, more interested than interesting even.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, there's a couple of ways that they can reach out to me. So obviously they can reach out via the website, local-recommend.com.au, paul@local-recommend.com.au. So they can email me. And by all means, we've got a successful Friday morning in-person group that we're running in Brisbane. So that's really starting to bear fruit now for the members, which is great. And as a result of that, we had a couple of double ups in that group. And so we've got a couple of people now, over half a dozen or more people in our Wednesday group. So, let's see where that takes us. I'm happy to launch out more groups as the demand is there. They can also go and jump onto their website and create a free referral profile on local-recommend.com.au. And again, we're developing that over time, and we are going to amplify it moving forward. And so all the membership fees from the in-person network are not just being ploughed straight back into that software. And I'm really quite excited about that because, again, by putting people before profit, and I think some beautiful things are going to happen with the connections that we're going to make through that network. But also, I'm doing some referral coaching as well. So, if there's companies out there, and as I say, 98% rely on referrals, but only 3% know where their referrals are coming from, or have a strategy in place to find those referrals. I do go in and consult with businesses as well. So if companies want to reach out to me and have me come in and have a look at their referral strategy within the company and come up with some solutions for them to generate more referrals for their business, I'm quite happy to do that as well on a one-on-one basis.
Look, I think that's so valuable. Hopefully some people will take you up on that because as you've highlighted through all those stories, there's real opportunity there. Look, really appreciate you coming on and speaking to us today. I know our audience will as well. Thank you for that, Paul.
My pleasure. Thanks, Chris.
If you have a Queensland business story that our audience will be interested in, reach out. You can contact us at connectedplatforms.com.au. We'd love to hear from you. Also, we highly value any feedback on what you like, don't like, want us to change, whatever it is with this podcast series as we settle into the format. So let us know that as well. And if you really love the content, please consider giving us a Google review. Everyone watching this will know this is often the best way to show a local business that you support them. So we always appreciate those. Look, we'll be back next week with a new Queensland business story. So thanks everyone for watching, and let's stay connected.